Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we watch the universe burn. And it was beautiful. Guess this week we watched Adrift.
Written by Chris Chibnall.
Directed by Mark Everest.
And aired on March 19th, 2008. Hey, my birthday.
Hey,
the day
happy
I turned,
birthday
I'm not going
to
reveal my age.
When you
even
turned,
though I probably have before.
52. You turned the same age as Doctor Who in 2008, so you turned 45. Congrats.
Yeah.
Just pretending that we're the same age as Doctor Who, I guess. On a slightly related but completely unrelated note, the very first X-ray general trivia thing this week was the fact that Eve Miles played a character on Doctor Who when it came back, and that Russell T loved her so much he cast her as Gwen Cooper, and I was like, wow. What a fun fact to put deep into season 2 of Torchwood on Amazon. With literally 2 episodes from the end now after completing this episode. That's a bit late to put that fun fact, but all right, sure.
Maybe they were grasping at fun facts to include this week.
Oh, we got a real underwhelming one again this week. You know, on the level of Carolyn Sheen was Martin Sheen's cousin, underwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Which, listening back to that episode, I'm still shocked you both were, still surprised at how underwhelming that fact was.
Well, speaking of last week's episode, bit of a correction. I spelled Mojo, the layer of the earth, as M-O-J-O.
Mojo.
Using the Spanish sort of pronunciation of the letter J. It's actually not. It's M-O-H-O.
Huh.
And it's short for
it's actually Moho.
Yeah, it's short for Mohorovičić discontinuity or something. It's some guy's name that I don't know how to pronounce because it's Czech. And it's the space between the crust and the mantle of the earth. The more you know.
The more you know.
Anyway, that has nothing to do with this week's episode other than maybe Gwen goes underground, so maybe she comes a little closer to the Moho. No, not maybe. She does. She does because the Moho is underneath. So.
And she does go underground.
Yes, and as we all know, everything important happens underground.
Well, wait. Hang on a minute. You know, what about all those hot air balloons, all those airplanes? They're not underground.
And they must not be important.
Oh, yeah. Air Force One, not important.
I agree. Unironically.
I mean, I don't disagree. No, I mean, okay. I am a fan of aviation history, so from that standpoint, I find it interesting. But, from a, do I care about Air Force One standpoint? No, not really.
Yeah, world existed before Air Force One, and it'll continue existing long after, I hope.
Well, yeah, I was saying we don't know about that.
What if the universe is tied to Air Force One? It came into existence with Air Force One, and when Air Force One is destroyed, even though Air Force One isn't even a real plane, is it? It's just whatever plane the president's on that's Air Force One or something like that, right?
Yeah, so there's a distinction. Air Force One originated as just the call sign of, I was reading the word time in my notes while I said that, was the call sign of any plane that carried the president. But then they made a plane specifically for the president, and that kind of colloquially also just became known by the call sign Air Force One, so people just know that as Air Force One. So it's a little bit of both. So, yeah. And also here's not a fun fact actually at all, is that the paint job for Air Force One was designed by like some famous artist in the 60s when Kennedy commissioned the building of a plane specifically for the president, and like hasn't been changed since until Donald Trump took office. He's like, you know what? I'm going to redesign Air Force One when I get a new plane. And everyone was like, but why? Like, you literally have no reason to. He's like, I'm just going to do it. And he basically painted it to look exactly like the Trump plane that he flew around for the campaign rallies in, except instead of black, he used blue, and instead of Trump, it said United States of America. And everyone was like, I mean, looks really bad, but okay, I guess you're the president.
Not surprised whatsoever.
Of course, that's only for the new plane that he was supposed to be getting, but then the Democrats sneakily somehow snuck in like a clause that like disallowed spending of money for new planes on paint or something. Like, I don't know the whole thing, so I don't even know what the next Air Force One's going to look like, if it's going to look like the classic iconic design, or if it's going to look like some gaudy, fake rich paint job. I guess we'll find out in like 4 years when it finally arrives. Who the heck knows?
Trump 2024. Let's go.
By which you mean Ivanka Trump 2024, yeah. Right? We shouldn't joke about this, considering how much of like the things we've predicted on the podcast have either come true or been like dangerously close to being true.
Well, anyway, something unfortunate happens to open this episode as well, which is that Jonah, a 15-year-old boy, gets spirited away by the rift, although we don't know that yet.
He gets spirited away by a light that's conveniently out of frame of the security camera. He also texts his mom. He's 9 minutes late to be home, but his mom can see him walking home along the dock, ? And he stops to text his mom. And the first note I wrote down is like, if he had just typed while he was walking instead of stopping in place, spending 30 seconds to a minute typing up his message on this ancient like cell phone keyboard, he would have been fine. He would have been fine.
Yeah.
And that's the lesson I took away from this.
Yeah. Multitasking saves lives. That's the moral of the story. That's the only thing I learned from this.
Yeah, same. Actually. Same.
Except for the fact that like everyone in Torchwood is a raging jerk. Especially Gwen. And
except for once, Owen.
Yeah.
Owen's the only one. Look, we've ragged on Owen a lot. We've given him gruff. But this week, he's the only one proposing like real actionable solutions.
He had one line.
And he had one line, and all it was like, look.
I'm with Jack.
He had two lines, because he also said like, he's like, look. He said the I'm with Jack line, but before that he said, these people who you want to help, Gwen, like, they need counseling, they need support, and we're like the worst people to do that, Gwen. And he's right. He's right.
The most reasonable, level-headed take from Owen.
Just I'm going to spoil it right now. That's my wildcard Owen for the moment, wildcard Owen moment for the week, because it's the only one he has. But anyway, we'll get there.
Right, so this kid is spirited away, and we cut to 7 months later when Gwen and who else but PC Andy are investigating the case.
Not only that, PC Andy, it's revealed, didn't come to Gwen's wedding, which is true. We knew that. But also, as can be like immediately predicted when she points out he didn't come, he's got feelings for Gwen, and always has apparently since they dated once.
Yeah, this isn't something that his previous appearances made me think, but it was once we learned, it was like it made sense,
Yeah, something. It's the kind of retcon that very easily just fits in with existing continuity, so it's not really like a retroactive continuity. It's just like expanding upon known lore. Doesn't feel like they're just changing his character on us, It
doesn't feel pulled out of nowhere, which even if it did, like, who cares? It's PC Andy, a very minor character. I wouldn't mind if they just randomly added this in, but like it makes sense with his interactions with Gwen before is the thing, so.
Because if I remember correctly, PC Andy's in all 4 seasons. Yes, PC goddamn Andes, and apparently in all 4 seasons of Torchwood, according to an Amazon X-Ray fun fact.
Heck yeah. I mean, this character is kind of growing on me. He's that, like, everyman guy, I guess. So he's a cop, but, like, you know.
He's also the first person since Reese, or the only person besides Reese, in fact, to call out Gwen for just, like, being kind of a jerk and using people.
Oh, not there yet.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, because we're talking about PC Andy being a very lovable sort of character.
Yeah, and anyone who gives Gwen shit about her shit that she gives others is okay, I guess. So basically what happened is that, as we know, this kid Jonah disappeared, and they have security camera footage of a camera that takes pictures every 6 seconds. In one image he's there, and the next he's not, and there's like this flash light. And so they suspect that whatever caused him to disappear was just outside the frame and was emitting this light.
Yeah, this is the worst security footage I've ever seen in my life. Freaking 1 frame per 6 seconds, like not even 6 frames per second, 1 frame per 6 seconds.
Yeah, I've heard, I don't know to what extent like this is implemented, but the city of London has CCTV, like you're just on camera at all times, and they make that very known when you're there. Since I've been to London, there's these signs everywhere that's like they're like smile, you're on camera. Maybe Cardiff needs to get with the picture.
Well, it's just like, what are you protecting at a frame every 6 seconds? Like the distance that totally forgot his name now. The kid who goes missing. Jonah, sorry. Like the distance Jonah covers in 1 single frame clearly indicates that if you were actually like moving at a reasonable, not even like a jog. If you were just walking quickly, you could just cover the entire span of the camera without it even seeing you.
Yeah, you just commit a murder on that camera, like.
You could. You have 6 seconds. You could reasonably walk up to someone, shove them off the bridge, and then walk out of frame with, like, that's something that could legitimately be an explanation for Jonah's disappearance. Someone could have walked into frame, shoved him over the edge, and walked out of frame. The solution to this is just a 2-man gang of people killing people on the bridge with one guy shining a light at the top of the frame and then another guy shoving someone off of the bridge.
That's like a classic like detective story solution to this, but no, it's actually an alien rift. And that's one of those things that's like, I try not to nitpick stories in this way at all, if I possibly can, but it's like, this is all down to the writing. There's no visual thing that contradicts this. So, like, if they had just changed the script to say, like, 1 second instead of 6 seconds, then, yeah, it would have just cohered a little more. Like,
it didn't even need to be 1 second. It could have been any number, any number, and it would have, in 1 frame he's there, and in the next frame he's not. What happened? It's not like the rift takes 6 seconds to activate, does it? Maybe that's why it had to be 6 seconds. Maybe Chris Chibnall setting us up for a big reveal at the end of the season that the rift takes 6 seconds to activate.
Yeah, somehow I doubt that. Anyway, we get this weird scene that sets up a scene later, I guess, because I feel like you can easily forget about the relationship between Jack and Ianto if it's not constantly mentioned. So Jack is like, but it's so weird because Jack mentions that he's going somewhere with Ianto, I forget where, but he's putting on his pants while he's talking to Gwen and Tosh, and it's like, what was his state of dress like 3 seconds before the scene started? Like,
Jack just like comes into work in his underwear every day.
I mean, that's what
they're like, Jack, this is sexual assault.
I mean, like, he's literally putting on his pants in the scene, so that's the only thing that makes sense. Like,
he just finished with Ianto, if you know what I mean.
Jesus Christ.
Am I wrong?
Maybe not.
Yeah, actually, the worst part about that is that there's the potential that I'm right with that statement.
Anyway, Gwen decides to go visit Nikki, Jonah's mother.
Yeah, but only because Andy is like, you know what, Gwen? And you know what? Andy's right, because we've been talking about this, actually. Because Andy goes, you know what, Gwen? You've gone hard. You joined Torchwood, and you were all like, you used to care about the people. You used to care about everybody in the world. And now you joined Torchwood, and you know what? You don't care anymore. You've gone hard, Gwen. That's what's happened. And it's true. We talked about this. When did we talk? It was 2 weeks ago, I think, where, like, it wasn't so much that Gwen changed Torchwood. What actually happened was that Torchwood just changed Gwen to fit the Torchwood mold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you remembered that scene, because that sort of found that scene and what PC Andy tells her here is kind of foundational for her actions throughout the episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she feels bad. I mean, she does feel bad because she does recognize, I think, she doesn't say this, but I think she recognizes that Andy's right, that she has really stopped caring about people since joining Torchwood.
I agree, and I think the rest of the episode, might as well just say it now, I think the rest of the episode is her, trying to prove that that's not true, but doing it in the most, like, Gwen-like and just dysfunctional way possible, where it's more about her than the people she's trying to ostensibly help,
Yeah, she's doing it in a very selfish way, where she's not doing it for their benefit. She's doing it to prove to either herself or to prove to PC Andy that she's still the same person, which she's clearly not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I mean, that's okay that she's not. But, yeah. So
she goes and meets Nikki, and she has a bunch of her, she just has a bunch of VHS tapes shoved in a corner, and it's revealed that she has been spending the past 7 months just going through crowd footage looking for Jonah.
Mm-hmm. That the footage is too grainy, and I'm like, oof, dating yourself there. Chris Chibnall writing this episode, dating it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is 2008, and they're still using VHS tapes for the footage, so I guess they still do that, though. I heard that Department of Defense still stores whatever they need to store, I guess, on VHS, because that's like harder to, like, hack, or impossible to hack. Like, yeah.
It's hard. Okay, that's true. Can't really hack a VHS, but you know what you can do? You can just pull a magnet out of your pocket
yeah,
and just wipe it.
Yeah.
Kind of feels dangerous to store, like, state secrets on a device that can easily be, like, beaten by something that basically every homeowner in America has if they own a fridge. Like,
I don't even know if that's true or not. I think I just read that in a YouTube comment.
Well, those YouTube comments. Didn't we get a YouTube comment that claimed to be, like, the granddaughter of someone who wrote for Classic Who?
Wait, we did? This is news to me.
Wait, did I not tell you about this?
No.
All right, I'll have to go and find it before next week. I'll see if I can find it, but I'm pretty sure I'm not misremembering that we got a YouTube comment from someone who claimed to be the granddaughter of someone who wrote for Classic Who. And I'm missing a lot of the details in my mind, but I remember seeing it at some point, so I'll go find it.
Oh, man. Wow. Okay.
Stay tuned for next week for the thrilling conclusion to that tale. So Gwen kind of gets the read off Nikki, and Nikki invites her to... Nikki's going to start doing this like support group for people who have had family members, kids, loved ones go missing in Cardiff. Mm-hmm. And she invites Gwen, and Gwen says, yeah, I don't know if I'll come, but I'll see. I'll see what I can do. And then Gwen goes to Tosh and is like, yo. Because we also forgot to mention that when we saw the really crappy 6 seconds per frame footage, that Andy was basically like, he thought Gwen knew more than she was letting on, because as he reveals, there's CCTV footage of Jack showing up to the scene like 1 minute after Jonah disappears. So Gwen is asking Tosh to Like, was there rift activity? Like, did you guys go on a mission there? Like, what was going on?
Right. And she asks Tosh. Wait, this might be later actually, but she asks Tosh to investigate the. This is later. Never mind. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's later.
Yeah.
Because I think, well, hang on, I'm just double checking my notes.
I think this is the point actually where we get a little bit with Reese, because Gwen actually stood Reese up to go do all of this.
Yeah.
So she comes home and for like what feels like the millionth time on the show so far, Reese is like, "Are you serious, Gwen? Like, you stood me up again."
Yeah. They're also supposed to be talking about having kids. And Gwen just really doesn't want to have the conversation. So I think Reese. So Gwen's just kind of saying, "Oh, like it's a work thing," and I think what's going on, like the dynamic here, is that Reese thinks that she's making up this work thing to get out of talking about having kids.
Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly it. I wonder how much time has passed since their wedding. 5 years.
5 years. Well, okay. I guess there's nothing to rule out it being 5 years.
No, maybe the non-advance of technology with the phones, but yeah, I mean, you couldn't have foreseen smartphones taking off in like 2008. I guess maybe you could have. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I just have no idea.
Well,
it's hypothetical, yeah, but a hypothetical. So the point is, she stood up Reese again, and in this scene, there's a very cartoonish like unzip. Gwen unzips like her jacket or something. I don't know, and it's a very cartoonish thing. It's just like, it's very exact, because like, I don't know, it just zooms in on the zipper and it's like, it's very exaggerated, like a, big like mime-like motion.
Gotta make sure the audience at home knows what's going on.
Yeah, gotta telegraph it.
Yeah, well then, Gwen and Reese go to Pound Town. And I guess in the morning, Tosh calls Gwen and is like, "Hey, I found this thing. You should come see what it is." And I'm like, "Just tell her. Just like tell her over the phone. Like, just tell her."
"I can't tell you. these wires might be tapped."
Gwen's like, "I know.
They're tapped by us." Sometimes it's easier though to explain in person. So I don't know.
I don't know, but okay, realistically, in your life, have you ever had a situation where you've wanted to tell someone something and you call them and you just go, "Hey, you should see this," and they go, "Well, what is it?" And you just go, "Well, I can't tell you. You just have to come here and see it."
No, but it is, like, it happens in TV and movies all the time, though, so it doesn't feel that out of place. Like, yeah, you're right. Now that I think about it, that is something that never has happened in real life.
Just one of those suspension of disbelief things that always, whenever I notice it now, I'm like, damn, just like tell her, like, just tell her. Because at some point you watch so many movies that you realize that so many TV shows and movies, the plot could just be resolved if they just talked to each other, like, if they just sat down and talked to each other for a couple of minutes. And like, this is the smallest instance where that's true, where it's like, if they just talk, they would save themselves minutes, if not hours.
Well, okay, fine, whatever. I don't know. I always rolled my eyes at those comments of like, yeah, if they just did this one thing slightly differently, then all of this would be pointless. It's like, yeah, really? Like, that's what you're nitpicking here? Like, the fact that the story wouldn't have even happened? Not you in particular, but like just in general,
The only times I ever notice it is in a movie like it's like a movie like Top Hat. In the movie Top Hat, this girl is told like, "Oh, the man, like she falls in love with this guy, and then she's told like, oh, like the manager who's going to produce her show, he's going to be in the hotel lobby wearing a tuxedo, and she goes down and she sees the guy that she's fallen in love with. But the fact was, the guy who she fell in love with never told her his name. So then the entire movie is hijinks based around she thinks that he's actually the manager who's managing her, who's actually married. And like there were multiple instances throughout the movie where like if someone had just gone, hey, you know his name is like Bob, right? She would have been like, wait, what? And like could completely diffuse the like situation she put herself in. Like that's the only time it's like really annoying because it's like just frustrating.
That's great. But that sounds amazing. I would love to watch that movie.
Top Hat's a good movie. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and they have the ending tap scene. The ending tap scene is like the reason why you watch that movie. So,
oh well, now that I know about that, I probably won't watch it.
I don't know if you're gonna watch it anyway.
Was like a musical or something?
No, it's not a musical. I mean, it's got dance numbers because Fred Astaire is known for his tap dancing, but it's not like there's no singing really. I think in that one.
Good.
Anyway, so Tosh explains that she saw a negative spike in rift energy the night Jonah disappeared, which she thinks is pretty freaking weird.
She has this idea that people might be pulled through the rift instead of the rift just like pushing stuff out.
Yeah, maybe if Owen hadn't opened the rift. Because I guess Torchwood had always been assuming the rift was like a one-way valve, but Tosh is postulating that it's more like a revolving door. It went for two completely different metaphors there.
Yeah, it's a two-way street when they thought it was a one-way street. It's I can't think of anything else. So they go to the support group, PC Andy and Gwen, that is. I don't know why I keep calling him PC. I could just call him Andy, but like...
PC Andy is his full name.
I thought his last name was Andy until this week, actually. But it's actually...
First name PC, last name Andy.
Well, no, I thought it was like... I thought we just didn't know his first name and that his last name was Andy, but it's actually Andy something or the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, they show up and they're the only ones there. And Nikki is like, I knew it. You're the only ones who are going to come, aren't you?
I knew it. Nobody else has been kidnapped except Jonah. He's literally the only person.
I don't think it was like that. I think she just thought nobody would want to come to her thing that she set up. Just to, another, I don't know, nail, not the final nail in the coffin, but another nail in the coffin of her, like, her psyche. The final nail probably comes at the end of this story. Anyway, before long, people start, filing in, and, eventually it's just like a ton of people.
Yeah, so Ben Foster, the composer for the show, my note here is, Ben Foster, no need to go so hard. Because he just pulls out all the stops in the incidental music for this one scene. It's like the most emotional, strings-laden piece I've heard in the entirety of Torchwood to this point.
Yeah, he really went ham in this scene, and wow, I can't believe I just said went ham, but anyway, what year is it? 2011. Anyway, no, I forgot what I was going to say about that. Awesome. No, okay, I remember. So, I was like, wow, why is the music sound so sinister? And then it hit me like, oh my god, all these people coming in means that this many people had people disappear.
Yes.
And Gwen is hit by this hard as well because she just goes outside and like just has this moment where she's like, damn, wow.
Yeah. I mean, she goes outside and she's like, this is too much for me, Andy. And he's like, what? And she makes up this BS excuse where she's like, what, am I supposed to help all of them? Like, I can't even help one of them. And Andy is reasonably like, no, you only promised to help Nikki. So just just only work on the Jonah case.
And then Gwen has some epiphany that's like not even related to what he says, and she's like, Andy, you're a genius.
Andy rightfully is confused. He's like, what?
So she goes back to Tosh, and this is the moment where Gwen goes full conspiracy theorist, because she asks Tosh to trace the locations of all the Rift victims, people who got pulled through the Rift, probably.
Yeah, she asks, what she asks is for Tosh to find all of the negative Rift energy points and where they are. Gwen's going to look through all the recent missing cases, and then they're going to cross-reference to see if any of them match.
Right. And we get a nice conspiracy montage. Gwen constructs her conspiracy wall. And then they do
a conspiracy room, actually.
It's true enough. And then they do a little PowerPoint on it. They gather in the Torchwood meeting room and do a little presentation. And by they, I mean Gwen does it while Tosh like hides her face and tries to pretend that she wasn't involved.
Yeah, Tosh is just sitting there like, this isn't going down well.
Because as it turns out, like, this is like, there's just nothing they can do about it. There's no telling when the Rift might take people in. There's no telling how many of these people were actually taken away by the Rift. And
yeah,
there's just nothing.
Well, so during the montage, we see that like on the missing person forms that Gwen prints, she's clearly added like a Rift question mark box that she checks off if they're near a Rift. So presumably they're only mentioning people who are near the presumed negative Rift energy points.
Yeah. But, you know, when she presents this to Jack, he just goes like, well, what can we do about it, Gwen? And she's just like,
You know, at first I was kind of with Jack there, like, you know, what can we do about this? But then he gets pretty, he gets pretty angry about the whole thing, but...
Probably, in hindsight, probably because he's basically already doing something about it, and I don't know, maybe he just wants to play the villain to keep this thing hidden or something.
I think he's just of the belief that the less people who know about this weird island, the better it is for everybody who's there.
Yeah, and frickin' Ianto had to just, okay, we'll get there.
I also do think that Jack knows what Gwen would want to do when she finds the island, and he doesn't want to have that conversation, and he doesn't want her to do what she ends up doing. Right,
and she even says in this scene, like, there's nothing they can do to stop this from happening, but they can at least provide support for the families and stuff, and everyone else just goes like, we're not equipped to do that, Gwen. This is when Owen
Owen has this reasonable line where he's like, they need like counseling and support for their friends who've gone missing, and like, we are not the people to do that. Like, we just, not only do we not have the facilities, we're just like not the people who would be able to do that.
We're just like a group of misanthropes. Like,
Owen also has a line lamenting like things from the past that you can't change, and he holds up his hand with his broken pinky, and I'm like, oh yeah, forgot he did that. Glad that the show is keeping on top of that.
Yeah, almost thought they were going to throw in a Diane reference here.
Kind of looks like there's going to be one next week, though.
Does it?
In the preview, it looked like there was a scene of Owen kissing Diane.
Oh, I didn't... the preview for next week was really confusing.
Well, so the Amazon summary basically says, as their lives flash through their eyes, we go back in time and find out how each Torchwood member was recruited.
Oh, so the flashback episode. Nice.
So yeah, we already know how Gwen was recruited, but what about Ianto?
It's just...
And Tosh, and most of all, Owen.
It's just like 30 minutes of it are just footage from Everything Changes all over again with nothing changed about it.
What was it? There was some shows do like clip shows, which are clips of the previous episodes. But there was a show, it's like a show where they're like, oh, do you remember X, Y, and Z? And then they just showed clips of previous episodes because they like don't have enough script, so they don't have time to film another episode.
Last time on Dragon Ball Z type thing.
Yeah. but just the whole episode. And then like I seem to remember Community. I was looking it up while I was kind of vamping there I was vamping a little bit there. Community did a clip show like that, but all the clips they used were just not even from the actual show. They were all newly filmed, so it came off like it was a clip show of episodes before, but but none of the clips are from actual episodes.
Wow.
And apparently a lot of people were like, yeah, I watched that episode and thought I had missed watching like a couple episodes before, but apparently not. Apparently they just got me. So maybe that's what it'll be next week.
Yeah, I mean, kind of have that same feeling, I guess. Anyway, we get another scene with Reese. They're in the park. Reese is just talking about something stupid, as usual. And
he's talking about work.
Yeah. Gwen just goes off on him about how they're probably never going to have kids because of her job. And then Reese just starts snapping at her, and they're just perfect for each other.
Oh jeez, I don't know why I did the like Jared Leto Joker laugh there. But well, Gwen's point is that like Torchwood doesn't give her maternity leave, and I'm like, girl, Jack would probably give you like a month off if you asked, or probably a year off for maternity leave if you wanted. Like Jack clearly likes you. That's besides the point. Because then Reese's point is like, everything's about your job. Like you come home and all you talk about is your job. All you do is your job. That's all it is for you. And he's like, and your job is protecting the world. And I get that. And it's important. But he's like, but what are you protecting? Real life. And what are you not living? A real life. So what's the point?
Yeah, Reese's rhetoric here is a little bit, like, it feels a little off. I don't know if it felt that way to you, but he was like, he made that point of like, you're protecting real life. You're not living your real life, Gwen, screw Torchwood type thing. But it's like, yeah, she's also protecting like the real lives of like millions of other people and not just her. Like,
yeah, I got Reese's point, but his actual argument was a little bit, there was a big fat question mark over it for me. I was like, Reese, would you like to try again? Because I get the point he's making is that Gwen spends so much of her time protecting the world for other people to live their lives that she never lives her life herself. But the way he goes about arguing that point is the worst way possible.
Yeah.
Both of them, I think, have valid points. They both also go about it in the worst way possible. So you know what? You're right. They're perfect for each other.
Yeah. Reese the rant and Gwen the, shoot, I didn't think this through. Oh no. I have nothing.
Gwen the, we'll come back to it. We'll workshop it throughout the episode. We'll come back to it.
Gwen the gamble, maybe? I don't know. Marrying her might have been a bit of a gamble, a bit of a roll of the dice, so to speak.
Gwen the, I don't know. Gwen the god. I keep coming up with words that are not related, like Gwen the ginger, which is like what? Or Gwen the gastropub or something.
Well, Gwen goes back to Torchwood to request of Jack that she be given a personal project related to, or that he allow her to have this personal project related to the people who went missing.
And she walks into Jack's office only to walk into and subject the audience to the abject horror of watching Jack and Ianto just going at it on screen.
I mean, sure, but look,
I'm being hyperbolic for comedic sake.
It's I mean, a few minutes before this, or like 10 minutes before this, we got like the horrific scene of Gwen and Reese similarly about to go at it, but they're also eating toast in bed at the same time.
They were also fully clothed.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true, but look, I'm not against, we got some Jack nudity in Bad Wolf. I'm not against, having more. Not that I want more. I don't know.
I'm not against, I'm not against it either. I just was surprised.
Yeah,
I was as surprised as Gwen was to see just Owen and Ianto. Owen and Ianto. Jack and Ianto. Jack and Ianto. Man, if it was Owen and Ianto, I might have just been like, what?
Oh, wait. You've been hiding this for quite a while.
I would have been more impressed that both Ianto and Owen hid it from everyone, but anyway.
Yeah, at this point, Ianto and Jack just are like, wow, this is really awkward. And Jack, again, refuses to give Gwen the project that she wants to undertake. And Ianto, if Ianto had not done this, talk about things that would have changed the course of the story. Where's Ianto taking the fall for this, huh? Why is it Gwen? Why? All right, I have a few questions about this. First of all, it's clear that Jack is letting his personal relationship with Ianto get in the way of work because he freaking told Ianto about the Rift Victim Island.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Didn't think about that.
Second of all, he probably told Ianto this in a lot of confidence, if not full confidence.
Yes.
And Ianto just told Gwen, but also did it in a way that would cover his tracks by leaving a package on her desk. So where's Ianto taking the fall for this, huh?
I also like how he makes absolutely zero effort to hide that it was him from Jack, because the instant Jack sees Gwen on the island, he's like, it was Ianto, wasn't it? No, not like Gwen could just stumble on this. Not like Gwen followed Jack or anything. No, Jack just immediately knows it was Ianto, wasn't it?
You're too inept for this level of investigation, Gwen. It was Ianto.
I was taking a sip of water while you said that and nearly choked while laughing.
Look, all I'm saying is that there are a lot of people at the forefront of being terrible people in this episode. Gwen, first and foremost. Reese, yeah, he has his few moments. Yeah,
he got his moments.
But Ianto is just like the covert a-hole in all of this, who just gets away with it all.
You know what? You're right.
So
that's all I have to say. You're right.
So this next scene is kind of funny at Andy's expense. He and Gwen are planning on going to the island that the package that Ianto left on Gwen's desk indicated that they should go to via like a 2007 GPS device. But Gwen manages to ditch him. And it's in this sequence, actually, that we learn the PC Andy wants to join Torchwood.
Yeah, so I have thoughts about this scene. Firstly, did Gwen really not realize this was GPS, first off? Second off, this episode and this scene in combination with the one in a couple minutes call into question again, who the heck knows about Torchwood and who doesn't?
Yeah. It seems like
what the hell?
Yeah, it seems like such a, I don't know, it's not an inconsistency because I guess just in this world that they're building, some people know and some don't, and that's fine, I guess, but it's like, it seems like such an inconsistent thing that you think they wouldn't throw in, of like some people clearly know and some don't.
Yeah, I guess, but it's just, I think the reason why it's such a clash is because the conceit of the show the conceit of the episodes typically relies on Torchwood being a secret organization. So it's weird for them to keep introducing people who already know about Torchwood.
Right. And Gwen, remember, Gwen didn't know about Torchwood before she joined. Yet her partner, PC Andy, apparently did.
Yeah, because if Gwen had ever told PC Andy, Jack would have been there with a beer in his hand and a retcon pill in the other, like waiting, like he wanted to do to Reese.
Right.
And it's not like Gwen could talk him out of not retconning PC Andy because, like,
yeah,
I guess that's the weird thing too, is that I guess PC Andy kind of makes sense because he knows about Torchwood through his job because they keep showing up to his crime scenes and taking over. And that was how PC Andy found out Gwen was in Torchwood, was because they came to a scene he was working.
Right.
But, like, Gwen was in the same position and didn't know about Torchwood, which I get was, like, so that we as the audience could relate to her not knowing about Torchwood, so that they could explain Torchwood to Gwen as an audience surrogate. But at the same time, like, what?
Yeah, it's just weird. It feels really inconsistent, even within episodes.
Mm-hmm.
This is like in this one at the end. Obviously, Nikki didn't know what Torchwood was until Gwen explained it. So
yeah, and that's the one thing that I really kind of thought was weak in this episode was Jack basically like telling Gwen, like, oh, you would have to tell her about Torchwood if you did this. Like, you would have to explain Torchwood to Nikki. Like, she wouldn't believe you. And it's like, well, the freaking old woman at the beginning of the season knew about Torchwood. Like, clearly, you know, that old rich, you know, a-hole who bought alien artifacts knew about Torchwood. So, like, I don't know.
Anyway, what happens is that Gwen, Andy book this boat to the deserted island that the GPS told them to go to, but Gwen manages to ditch Andy by telling him to get some tea.
The most British way of ditching someone ever.
So she goes to the island. There's a scene that, well, I know you're going to bring up some of the similarities here, but let's just touch on it now to preempt it a little bit. It really mirrors Fugitive of the Jadoon, which Chris Chibnall would write 10 years later.
Yeah.
She explores a lighthouse. She wanders around to some fancy music. Not in the episode, just, you know, as part of the score.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's just lay it all out here. She goes to the island. She finds the lighthouse. She got mysterious music. She's exploring the lighthouse. She finds an underground object, which then reveals completely new information and partially retcons a character we've known for the entirety of the show. I mean, like, the similarities are pretty hard to deny. Especially so since they were both written by Chris Chibnall. I mean, some of the other similarities we've noted with, like, the structure of the season, sure, you could write them off by being like, well, those episodes weren't written by Chris Chibnall. Maybe he just edited, or maybe he just consulted. But this episode and Fugitive of the Jadoon were both, like, Chris Chibnall penned both these scripts.
Yeah, and I'm here for this. This is a great... I really like the scene in this episode, how it was all done, how it was shot, and... back when we discussed it on Fugitive of the Jadoon at the beginning of this year, I remember that being one of my favorite scenes from that episode, and that episode itself being one of my favorites from the season.
No, I agree. I really like this scene in both episodes. I think it's great.
Yeah, maybe Chris Chibnall should throw it in a little more. You know, maybe 2 wasn't enough.
Well, it's again, it makes me think, like, what other similarities between the structure of Torchwood and Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who will appear or have happened or are going to happen that we can, like, tease out when we finish this season?
Here's one that, you know, is up for debate as to, like, I guess how much you want to put merit into it as a similarity. Is like 2 seasons with the same crew, and then things change, which is probably what's going to happen after, you know, after Revolution.
Yeah.
We're going to be getting a cast change, and I believe that's going to happen with Torchwood as well. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's going to happen after series 2 of Torchwood. We're going to get some new characters, because I do know that this cast does not stay throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I know as well that this cast doesn't last all 4 seasons.
Yeah, and I would be willing to bet that series 2 finale is when those changes take place.
It's the most apt place, considering season 3 is only 5 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 5. 5 or 6. Whatever. We should mention also, if Revolution of the Daleks, since we're coming up on that, actually, if that airs on Christmas, we'll be very lucky in that episode will air. And we will record. We'll record our episode and release it between season 2 and 3 of Torchwood on Trust Your Doctor, right, which would be very convenient. If it airs on New Year's, that won't be the case.
Right.
So cross your fingers it airs on Christmas.
We'll probably find out in a couple days, I think. We're recording this on 28th of November, almost the 29th.
Yeah, I think the trailer is supposed to come out on the 30th. So presumably when that trailer comes out, they'll announce when it's going to air. So I guess by the time this goes out, this might even be like outdated.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes if it's announced, which it probably will be. Anyway, what Gwen does on this island is that she sees Jack, of all people, and he's following some people. He's just following some people to some underground lair.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes and investigates, and it turns out that it's this sort of hospital / just caretaking facility for people who have become victims of the rift.
Yeah, my next note here is, this is going to be something totally innocuous, isn't it? Or something like they got driven mad by going through the rift and that's why they're here. And you know what? Turns out I was right.
Yeah, Gwen gets taken. Jack takes her to the cliffside and kind of explains it all, and that's exactly what it is. And she says, well, then we have to tell Nikki that Jonah is here because she sees Jonah. And, well, he's not the same as he used to be.
He's older. Way older.
Yeah, and he has burns on his face. And, his story is that he was taken to a planet that was on fire, or something was being destroyed or something, and he was rescued, but he was badly burned, and he spent 40 years off Earth and watched this world and this galaxy be destroyed. So.
And he was trying to get home, but couldn't get home.
Yeah, I don't think we ever find out how he came home, but it's really not important.
He probably fell through the rift again. Jack implies later that that the rift seems to be trying to make good on taking people before, whatever that means. Because he says the pace at which they're coming back seems to be increasing.
Huh. Wonder if that's going to come into play later on.
Because he says something like, when he took over at Torchwood, there were only 3 people in that facility, maybe 2. And then he said there's 17 now, and they've been coming quicker.
Gwen tells him that she has to tell Nikki, and her conscience is not going to let her do otherwise, because Nikki has been desperate to find Jonah. Jack obviously doesn't want this to happen, but then tying it back to the Grey subplot in a way that I thought was nice without calling it out. Gwen says, if you were looking for someone desperately, wouldn't you want to find them, or wouldn't you at least want to know what became of them? And you kind of you zoom in on Jack's face. Not zoom in, actually. You just kind of focus on Jack's face there a little bit, reminding you that, there's this entire Grey thing that we haven't heard about in, a couple weeks.
And you kind of remember, oh, yeah. Then you also learn at the end, yeah, it turns out maybe not. Maybe not.
Well, so what happens is Gwen goes to Nikki and she explains Torchwood and she explains everything. And she's like, so you want to see your son, right? And she's like, yeah, of course. And Gwen, we give Gwen a lot of crap, but like, yeah, she does. She explains to the best of her ability. If you're dead set on doing this, which she is, she takes all the measures she needs to make this easy or to make it better. She goes like, you understand, like he's not a kid anymore. He's aged 40 years. He's burned. He looks kind of alien, and he's not the kid you knew. And Nikki's like, all right, let's do this.
Well, she has to call Andy first.
Right.
Because she needs Andy to confirm to Nikki that she's trustworthy. Which...
Well, the meeting is like one of the most heartbreaking things Torchwood has ever shown us. As soon as Nikki sees Jonah, she's like, oh, hell no, that's not my son. Except in a more horrified way. And, you can just see, like, the distress and the dejection on Jonah's face until he starts, like, describing things that only he would know about her.
And their house.
Yeah. And she's like, oh my God.
It is you.
They have a little touching reunion, and you think, oh, she did accept him after all.
Just when you think everything's going to be all right.
Turns out that because Jonah... Now, I don't know if this was supposed to be like literal or metaphorical, but, Jonah looked into the heart of a dark star, really, really scrutinized the John Carpenter movie, and no. Something happened to him that caused him, like, some severe mental, like, anguish, and now he screams at the top of his lungs for, like, 20 hours a day.
Yeah, it drove him mad.
Right. Well, similar to the master staring into, what was it? The time vortex.
Yeah, I mean, actually, like, yeah, heavily similar to that.
You hear him scream. It's, obviously it's not something you could, like, live with for 20 hours a day, but how it's done is, like, the characters are hearing this absolutely deafening, painful, ear-splitting scream, whereas to us it's just a scream.
Yeah. It kind of fades out as she leaves, and we get this voiceover from Gwen explaining the whole, like, looked into a dark star thing.
Right. It was kind of weird to me that they added narration from Gwen at the end. Like,
I think it was just to explain why he's screaming.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was necessarily a more graceful way to do it than that.
Yeah, I think maybe if they had just thrown in, like, one line of narration at the beginning from Gwen, where it's like, okay, this is all being narrated by Gwen. Just felt a little out of left field at the end there.
Yeah, all right, sure.
Anyway, she, reconvenes however long later with Nikki in their apartment or house or whatever, and she's like, you took away my, or what does she say? She's like, you took away, before all this I had hope, and you took that away from me, Gwen. And I wish I had never, met you, wish I'd never met, or wish I'd never learned that Jonah was in the state that he's in. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she basically says, like, because Gwen's telling her she can visit every week, and she's basically saying, I don't really want to. Like, I lost my son.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, just not a good ending for anyone whatsoever. The final thing you see of Nikki is her cleaning up her version of the conspiracy wall, which is the stack of tapes, and boxing up all of Jonah's stuff because she kept his room intact until now.
Yeah, and there's kind of a mirror a scene that mirrors that between like Gwen taking down her conspiracy room and Nikki taking apart the Jonah's bedroom.
Right. And the whole episode ends with Gwen telling Reese about all of this. Hey, maybe they should have done like a frame story thing where it begins with Gwen like weeping and Reese being like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "Well, there was this kid who disappeared 7 months ago."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like probably 75% kidding with that. Since it sounds like a dumb idea.
Oh yeah, Amazon's X-Ray Fun Fact of the Week happens right now. So Ruth Jones, who plays Nikki, according to the fun fact, she only applied to a single like drama and acting school because she didn't think she would get accepted anywhere. And then she did. She got accepted to the one school she applied to. She also apparently, according to Wikipedia, was cast against type in this episode. She's apparently like a comedic actor.
Yeah, she'd been in mostly comedic stuff, as I saw from her IMDb. Which, since we're on the topic, why not just jump into how many of Britain's 10 actors we have this week?
Yeah, why not? I only looked up Ruth Jones.
Okay, well, take her away then, because I looked up someone else as well.
Okay. Yeah, she's been in Gavin and Stacey, Thunderbirds A Go, Little Britain, an EastEnders spin-off. Emma is like the movie she's apparently very well known for. It was one of her first movies. And as a fun fact, her role in Little Britain was named Mefani, the same thing that the pterodactyl that Torchwood keeps in their basement is named.
Huh.
I thought that was weird.
Wow, yeah, and
that pterodactyl we haven't seen since like season 1, or I think we saw it briefly when John Hart came into the Torchwood base in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Her role in Gavin and Stacey, or her, I don't really know. Is Gavin and Stacey like a
I think it's a sitcom.
Is it a sitcom? Yeah, so she was in that with James Corden, who is obviously super famous and has also been on Doctor Who a couple times as, what was his name, like Craig or something?
Craig, yeah. I think. And also who I found is a massive jerk, but
really?
Anyway. Yeah, I learned, allegedly, he's a massive jerk.
Yeah, I'm not surprised about that for some reason.
I mean, he's got a talk show in America instead of the UK. If that doesn't say everything that it needs to, then I don't know.
Well, we also had Robert Pugh, I guess, Pugh, playing Jonah, the older Jonah. And he had been in Hungry Earth and Cold Blood. I have no idea. Some character whose name I didn't recognize. Okay. And that I didn't think to look up. But he's also been in Casualty, Thin Air. He's had hundreds of acting roles, or a couple, like 100 something, I forget, but over 100. Thin Air, Resort to Murder, a title I like because it's it's a command. It's really an imperative there, telling its audience to resort to murder. No. He's been in Drover's Gold, The Lakes, The Time of Your Life, Justice. He was in Game of Thrones. Mr. Selfridge, a bunch of other stuff that I don't recognize most of the things that he was in, nor do I recognize most of the things I just named. So, there you go.
Nice.
Yeah, that's all I had. For that segment, at least.
Yeah, I was going to say, for that segment.
We touched on some of the other ones. Like, we mentioned Owen's moment, which is really the only moment he had. His wild card moment.
Yeah, Owen really had one
card.
moment. So.
But even still, that one moment was quite surprising with him not being a wild card for once.
Yeah, actually being the reasonable one in the room.
Right. He's found new and exciting ways to be a wild card, including not being a wild card. Really.
Yes, the interesting number paradox.
Pushing the boundaries. Redefining wild card.
Oh, what a guy, Owen. What a guy. Gonna be sad to see him go, honestly. I'm gonna be sad. But, all good things must come to an end. And that's one of them.
Well, some good things begin anew, like Tasha's tech. I almost want to call it Tasha's tech corner. Is that what have we called it that in the past? I can't even remember.
I think so, yes. I think that was the original name for it, in fact.
And we just stopped, huh?
Yeah.
Well, she's back and better than ever this week, triangulating various, rift locations, assessing negative rift energy, and she had quite a bit of other technobabble, a couple sentences worth of it, in fact. So she's back and better than ever.
Hell yeah.
Personally, I'd love to say that we could ignore Ianto this week, but with his egregious missteps, let's call them, how can we?
Yeah, you're right. The fact that, like you said earlier, he kind of flew under the radar for being at fault for this.
Yeah, and it's just he didn't know what would happen, but why did he do it? Just why the hell did he do it?
Yeah, and that kind of plays into what I really thought coming out of this episode actually is that everyone in this episode kind of ends up in a worse place than they started with, thanks to Gwen's actions. And that's not good.
Yeah, that's something I was thinking about heavily, and was something I wanted to touch on a bit here, which I know we still have the Jack segment to do, so kind of segmented here, no pun intended.
Yeah, but we'll get to that.
So Chris Chibnall, at least in the current era of Doctor Who, is kind of known and at times mocked for having all the characters in his stories be really good people. And this is not that at all.
Yeah, this is basically the polar opposite. We joked about it, but yeah, Owen's really the only person in this episode who's not just a jerk. Sure, PC Andy, Reese, they both have legitimate criticisms of Gwen, but the way they go about it is to basically be a jerk to her.
Mm-hmm.
To confront her, to be angry, to get into an argument and then resolve nothing. Nobody in this episode comes out looking good. Not even really Nikki.
No. And
that's, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Even Jack, who, isn't really doing anything super terrible. He's been hiding it from the entirety of the Torchwood team, that's par for the course for Torchwood. Because he also has a legitimate point, like PC Andy, like Reese, where he's look, we can't just release these people back out into the world because they've been through experiences people can't even begin to understand. Some of them have been driven insane by their travels, and we can't in good faith put them back into the world, and some of them need specialized care that only we can provide. Again, though, he just goes about justifying that in the worst way possible.
Yeah, and I believe he even said that when he first started being in charge of Torchwood, the people were just kept in the vault, and I don't think he says the word cryostasis or anything like that, but that's they were being frozen in the vault, right? They were just sort of in suspended animation or something, and he took them out of that.
I think that's kind of the implication.
Yeah, and he took them out of that. That's almost I feel that would almost be better, is to just leave them in their frozen state.
I guess. I think he wanted to give them something to live for, or at least to allow them to live out their life.
Yeah. Well, I guess that goes into how much he should be affected by this, which I was going to say a lot, but to be honest, I don't even really know. Did Gwen tell Jack? Does Jack know that Nikki saw Jonah?
Yeah, I think he does. Because he has to give Gwen permission to bring her over, and Gwen implies she got permission from Jack for Nikki to go visit any time, any day that Jonah's good, basically.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but I was also maybe she could have just done this all by herself. I guess, yeah, I guess it was probably, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, who probably be pretty affected by it, I guess. Maybe more affected by the fact that Gwen knows. Or maybe, hell, maybe he won't be affected because he understood what he knew what Gwen was going to do. Which is partially why he probably didn't want to tell her.
Yeah.
What can you do? It's one of those Torchwood episodes where they don't like a happy ending, plus just on top of that, they have to make everyone look like a jerk.
Love it.
Yeah. Just awesome. Cool. Awesome.
But I really liked this episode, though, because I think that even though, sure, even though it's a lot of people being jerks, I think it touches on a lot of interesting themes, like what do we do with the people who can't necessarily live a regular life in society, which is what Jack's really dealing with, like on a personal level. He's like, I don't know what to do with these people. Like, we can't put them back into society. So I set this up. I told the social workers who live here that they're just experiments gone wrong. And it's the best I can do, basically.
Yeah, this is also, it's part of this era of Doctor Who that a lot of people now criticize for not like being really sci-fi enough. I don't get this criticism, nor do I agree with it, but like, yeah, and in a way, this episode is far more interested in displaying those relationships and those moral quandaries than it is with anything. It has the riff stuff, but like that could have been, it's really wasn't the focus of like what's cool sci-fi stuff happened to make this all possible. It was really more like the emotional side of things, and even the investigative / police side of things. So.
Yeah, it reminds me of when on Zenith we talked about using genre instead of as a categorization tool, as like a lens to view something through. And that's kind of like what this episode is doing, is that it's addressing or utilizing these concepts, like loss and what do we do with these disabled individuals. And looking at them through this sci-fi lens where it's like, okay, the rift is what gave these people their physical or mental illnesses. And in the end, like the themes that it's dealing with, it doesn't necessarily matter how they got those injuries or illnesses. But like Chris Chibnall, when he's writing this, Russell T, when he's producing this, is clearly using like the sci-fi tilt of the show to examine these through that lens.
Right.
So overall, I liked it.
I did as well. Yeah, good episode.
Also kind of liked that it just had a downer ending. I don't know why I liked that.
Maybe last week's episode was too humorous and,
No, but last week was the PG Hammond one.
Oh, right, I was talking about 2 weeks ago. My bad.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't have anything else to talk about, and let's see. I've got an email from Steven that probably should have read last week when he was on the episode. Can't be bold without breaking the mold. Hey guys, it was very surprising how spoiling movies seemed to become a running gag on last week's episode. I thought it was very funny. Anyway, regarding the title, Can't Be Bold Without Breaking the Mold, it reminds me of the All-Star lyric, only shooting stars break the mold. And I thought it was hilarious when Keon mentioned later on that he's waiting for All-Star to make a comeback. Anyway, here's my question. What scene from Doctor Who or Torchwood would you put the song All-Star over? Cheers, Steven.
Oh my god.
I've got the perfect answer to this. It's the That's One Hell of a Bird montage from Consent. When it's just the time loop over and over again at the end of the episode. But imagine that, and only shooting stars break the mold, playing right as Peter Capaldi punches through the wall of diamond.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to come up with anything better than that, so let's just go with that. Oh my god,
Steven.
That shot where you see it's an ocean full of skulls, and then like the castle is just in the middle of nowhere. Like somebody. Okay. Or hey, somebody once told me the world was gonna roll me, just right over the scene where the second Doctor gets screwed over by the Time Lords. End of the War Games.
When they were erasing his mind, somebody once told me. When the 12th Doctor is deciding whether or not to erase Clara's mind, somebody once told me.
I mean, you could create an entire music video with various clips that fit the different lyrics of the song.
Yeah, you could. You could.
It would be really time consuming and not worth the effort.
Not worth it.
It's doable. Doctor Who gives us enough footage to do it with. Oh god.
The Merca comes on screen. In Underwater Menace. Somebody once told me.
God, what horrors have you unleashed, Stephen, with this question? I feel like we're going to constantly go back and reference what scenes we would put All-Star over now.
Okay, I'm done. I've got no more emails.
We have a couple comments from Facebook. These are both on Something Borrowed. So, RG commented
2 weeks ago.
I will always love Reese for Gwen. They're perfect together. Hey! More and more as the series continues. Their Big Finish stories are delightful. The actors clearly enjoy playing their parts. I totally agree. There is definitely a chemistry between both, I think, Reese and Gwen, but also Eve Miles and, what's his name? Kai Owen?
Kai Owen, yeah.
Yeah. We have another comment from Alex on the same episode saying, yay, we are at another of the key Torchwood milestones. Specifically, we have now reached the point where I can reveal that I completely forgot Owen and Gwen were ever a thing, because Jack seems a far more obvious choice for Gwen. I quietly ignore the introductory scene of Owen that RG referred to, since even for Wildcard Owen, that introductory scene was super dark. Of course, as I watched this while I was at school, I had no idea quite how dark. To briefly get back to Blake 7, I always thought the reason Blake was dodgy was his relationship with Inga. Wait, hold on. To briefly get back to Blake 7, I always thought the reason Blake was dodgy, I think I should say with his relationship with Inga.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I can't decipher this sentence. With Inga, his cousin. Okay, let me just start that over. To briefly get back to Blake 7, I always thought the reason Blake was dodgy was his relationship with Inga, his cousin from Hostage. The whole leading people to fight thing was far more justified generally, I thought. Well, Gwen's character is to be the audience surrogate and the cop, which I think explains her sins. Everybody else lives in this grim and gritty world. Gwen is LARPing. Jack... Yeah,
that's one way to put it.
That's a great way of putting it, actually. I think I responded to the comment like, whoa. That's a great way of putting it. Anyway, Jack's been dying over and over for centuries at least. Owen is now dead. Toshiko has at least 2 dead lovers, arguably 3 since you could count Owen. And Ianto has a dead lover and is in love with Captain Stands on Rooftops in the Rain. Gwen gets to go home to her loving husband and pretend she's living a normal life. I think changing the ending of this episode makes sense, literally as you explained that Jack offered them drugged champagne, it occurred to me that it would be very Torchwood if Jack quietly retired Gwen from Torchwood and let her live her happy life with her happy husband, ignorant of Torchwood again. Do you think Gwen ever told Reese about her relationship with Owen, or is it that quiet, bitter reality underlying even her fantasy of a normal life? Has Gwen had other affairs? Sorry for the long comment, but I like the episode and your podcast of it. Well, first of all, no need to apologize for the long comment. I like reading these long comments and having a lot to dig into, such as whether Gwen ever told Reese about Owen, and I want to say no.
Yeah, I want to say no as well. After the retcon incident, I don't think she ever told him. I think it's just something that's in the back of her mind that eats away at her.
Yeah, I don't even know. Does she feel remorse over it? Who knows? Maybe, but I mean, hell, it's Gwen. Maybe not.
Given the way Gwen's been acting, I might have to say no.
Yeah.
She doesn't feel remorse.
We forgot to detail her sins. How did we forget that?
Oh,
well,
no.
She committed
I
basically all of them this week.
Yeah. Well, no gluttony.
No. But okay.
She commits lust, though.
Okay, yes. So lust, yes.
Wrath, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Pride.
Yep.
Sloth? Not really.
No, not sloth. Envy? I don't think so.
I would say maybe a little bit. I think she envies PC Andy's simplistic view of the world a little bit.
Okay.
Because, I mean, that's kind of the vibe I get is when PC Andy's like, you used to care about people. Like, when you worked for us, you used to care. And I think she's envious. Perhaps maybe not even of PC Andy. Maybe she's just envious of the person she used to be.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and greed.
She wants it all.
I guess. Maybe she wants to have her cake and eat it too. Like, she wants to prove that she's just this upright person. Or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, greed doesn't have to be about just wanting all the money. Like, greed is about just wanting more than you need, really.
Right. Anyway, yeah, I also feel that, like, if Gwen had told Reese, we would have seen it.
Yeah, that's one of those things that you wouldn't just trust an off-screen interaction to, because it's the kind of thing that could be character-defining.
Yeah.
Not that the show hasn't done character-defining moments off-screen before. Just kind of think Chris Chibnall's better than that. Russell T, too.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this in my reply comment to Alex, but, like, yeah, it's a good point that, like, that Gwen is pretty much the only one who has, I think the way I put it in my comment, actually I'm looking at my comment right now, so this is how I put it, is like, Gwen's the only one who has anything other than Torchwood in her life, when you think about it. Is like Jack, all Jack has is Torchwood, all Yonto has now is Torchwood, Tosh has no life outside of Torchwood, Owen, as much as he gives the rest of his colleagues crap about it, pretty much, yeah, has no life outside of Torchwood, both because he's dead and, like, just looking at his life in season 1 looked a little bit empty.
It looks like you go to the bar, pick up the first person with legs who will sleep with you and sleep with them.
Yeah. Maybe Susie had a little bit more going on in her life. Who knows?
Perhaps. Mayhap.
But yeah, Gwen is really the only one who has this whole life with Reese and whole life outside of Torchwood. Which...
And that's kind of...
Yeah, go ahead. I think you're going to say exactly what I'm about to say.
Well, I guess we'll see. But I was going to say, I think that's kind of the, like, point Reese makes in this episode is that Gwen is or at least the point that Reese, like, wanted to make, the one he strove to make, which is that Gwen is the only person who straddles the two worlds of Torchwood and the, quote, regular world, unquote. And she used to straddle the line pretty well, but now she's just all Torchwood all the time. And even though she leads this life outside of Torchwood, she doesn't really lead that life outside Torchwood, if you know what I'm saying. Like, even at the end of the episode, we didn't even mention the final scene. She finally cooks dinner for Reese like she's been promising, but then, like, she's all like, oh, we'll talk about what you want now. But then she breaks down crying, and then just Reese is like, all right, tell me what happened at work. Like, I don't know if that's what you were going to say, but that's where my mind took me in that conversation.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say, yeah.
So, guess we'll see what happens. 2 whole more seasons of Torchwood to go, but the amazing thing is that we're beyond the halfway point in terms of episodes.
Yeah. Gonna have to pick up that. Thinking of picking up the box set, Blu-ray. I don't know if it's Blu-ray or DVD, but there's a box set for Torchwood
Nice.
that I'm thinking of picking up because I've seen it for like 40, which is, and it's all the seasons, so it's not a great deal, but it's a reasonable one, I think. So, and I'll watch these again. I probably at some point. So
probably, probably
not soon, but maybe in a couple of years.
Yeah, when the appeal has faded, like you did with The Prisoner, and then you'll realize it wasn't actually that good.
Yeah, and personally, was lesser than I thought, I'd be more willing to rewatch Torchwood, I think, than Doctor Who, just because it's a way more traditional show, or what traditional for nowadays is not serialized or anything like that. Some Doctor Who episodes, I have had the urge to rewatch some, and I have rewatched some over the years, but a lot of times when I think should I rewatch some Doctor Who, it just feels so pointless to rewatch them. I don't know why, but I just kind of have felt that way.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add to that. So I guess on that note, we're done. I just saw right now that David Prowse died. He played the Minotaur in the Time Monster, I believe it was. He also played Darth Vader under the mask. He didn't voice Darth Vader. He just physically played Darth Vader.
Yeah. Wow.
So, a somber note to end this episode on a somber episode on. So if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decaturvegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Adrift. You can find us on YouTube at Decatur Vegetable. Find us on any podcasting platform at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you liked the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. Next time, we're going to be apparently delving into our casts past, but until then, on fragments, but until then, the end. I almost forgot the name. I forgot to include the name. I had the name right in front of me, but